And we're in session. This is the first Angela's Homeschool program podcast. It's an educational podcast to help you create your own homeschool teaching style. And I'm really enjoying doing these series of podcasts. This is something I'm very passionate about. If you have not heard me before, my name is Angela, and I've been homeschooling for 9 years. 9 years have gone past so quickly. I'm always learning something new, and I can tell you this. My children have taught me so much. I'm a single mom of 2 daughters, one of which had autism. She's recovered from autism, and that's another show. But let's quickly jump into it. There's many different methods to teach your children in the homeschool world. One of my favorites is the classical education homeschooled method or style or approach. You can call it by any label, but it's often known as classical education. Now, there's classical conversations that may run you a little bit pricey if you have a number of children, depending on how much money you're willing to invest. And basically, this is a literature-based approach, and for the child to study rhetoric and logic. A lot of times, they're also Latin-based words, Latin root words. I know this. I've done this, and there's a lot of different curriculums for Latin. I like to go to the Cambridge one online. The Cambridge University has programs for their public schools. You'd write in, say your last name, Homeschool Academy. There's your school. And you could get their free Latin program that they give to their public schools over in England, and it's really good. The only part that may be a little bit expensive is that you have to pay for the testing. Now, should you decide not to test, that is your decision. All right. The goal for a classical education is to have an independent thinker and develop great communicators and leaders. So, and in the schools, we have like a watered down education. Back in the 70s, early 80s, and of course before that, we had a classical education in the public schools where Latin was taught, logic was taught. Rhetoric and logic often taught together, mind you. Now, the Charlotte Mason approach. She was an influential educator in the 19th century who advocated developing the soul and the spirit of a child. Kind of like the Montessori approach. The Charlotte Mason Montessori are very similar in my opinion. Her method is also a literature-based with English and other subjects taught in an integrated way, usually with a literature-based program. Even to do a read aloud, and they would draw what came to mind as the teacher was reading. It's a great approach, and it's very popular with homeschoolers. More often than not, depending on the size of the town that you live in, you're going to find a Charlotte Mason homeschool support group. I recommend it highly. Now, the Montessori method is based on the work of Dr. Maria Montessori, and she's concerned with the education of young children, and it's more, what are they interested in? What grabs their attention? To use that. It's freedom in a structured environment, if that makes sense. You have some play centers set up, and you watch what they gravitate towards, and free access to materials, exercises. You can use the computer with this too. Resources, that are for sensory and motor training. Like, for example, through the Montessori method, I learned that to have a child learn how to use scissors, you roll out some Play-Doh and you have the child cut with child-proof scissors, of course, cut the Play-Doh. It makes it easier for them to develop those muscles that are necessary to cut paper with the scissors. It's very helpful, those little things. And, of course, I had a child that was recovering from autism, so muscles were an issue. So I really liked their exercises that they had to do the simple sensory and motor skills. So if you can think of Montessori as not really teaching, but encouraging and guiding the students while they explore, just to bring them opportunities. Like if they're not really into science, why not take them to a planetarium where they can see lots of different things that they may not know about at such a tender young age. You never know what's going to inspire your child. Okay, unschooling. I'm going to try to make this quick, and I may do a part 1 and part 2. Unschooling. It's kind of like Montessori. It's like a different, older group of Montessori. Unschooling allows the children to take control of their educational choices. You have to have a lot of trust here. Unschooling is a student-directed instead of teacher-directed approach. Excuse me, I hiccuped. Unschoolers often take issue with current expert-based education system. They really question the system. They're thinkers. They're not low-level thinkers. They're high-level thinkers. The teacher, the parent has to trust the individual's ability to guide their own education by following their interests. This does work. Now, I mentioned Grandma Marilyn in a former podcast. Her grandchildren, one in particular, he's older. He's in college, and I think he's 16. He's doing quite well, though. He's interested in theater. So they encouraged him to start writing scripts and submitting them to places where he might win an award or to see his play before his eyes. And he started to win awards at Emerge programs, and it was just a wonderful fit for him. So Unschooling's worked with that family quite well. They're quite eclectic. So I had to have more structure. That does not work for me. But I'll tell you what, I envy them not having a lot of curriculum. Boy, do I envy them. This style does avoid use of textbooks, reviewing, quizzing, or formal testing. The child's natural curiosity and interests are the key to their daily activities, just like with my friend, her grandchild. That's what he was interested in, reading Shakespeare, in his 5th grade, and just reading all these different screenplays. He was really interested, and he's really good at math. They would use Khan Academy, an online program for math. So, you know what? I'm going to keep some of these others then. We'll talk. We'll end up with this one. I'm just looking at the different ones I've written down. A traditional homeschool method. It mimics what happens in the public school system in the classroom. This is what I started out in the beginning because I thought this is what I was supposed to do. I'm supposed to have a chalkboard/whiteboard. I have to have bulletin boards. There's file cabinets. There's resources. I have test tubes. I have mixers. I have scales. I have, the SRA reading lab. Still have it, by the way. And I still use it. That's how I started out, very traditional, and it's very much a teacher-driven content. The student does not have much say in the curriculum. Now I allow them to have more say. I've relaxed a little bit. Traditional teaching styles tends to focus on classic literature, works by Charles Dickens, like Tale of the Two Cities. We're reading that right now. Nathaniel Hawthorne. You can talk about Calvinism and Nathaniel Hawthorne's works. Like, let's look at the Scarlet Letter. Where is the Calvinism in the Scarlet Letter? These are the questions I asked my older child. A Calvinism that man sins necessarily and is down for it. Hester and Penn have sinned in order to humanize Pearl, the child, from that affair. Hester has to be damned. And so does the minister. They both wear the A. So that's where Calvinism shows up in the Scarlet Letter. And these are things that we discuss. There's a lot of talking, especially driving. We'll discuss things. I have a podcast where I'm reading a book. and they download it to their iPod, and they're listening to their own mother read A Wrinkle in Time. I've taken the traditional homeschool method to a different level because there's so many opportunities out there. And that's what I want to impress to you. If you considered homeschooling and now you're listening to this podcast about different homeschool teaching styles, and I haven't even touched them all. There's bound to be one that will fit your family, that will fit your style, your time constraints, what the child can handle. The child may not be able to handle an hour to 2 hours of work. If your child has autism, for a matter of fact, you want to look at the Stevenson language program. It's very visual oriented. They'll get it because the Stevenson language program deals with concepts, a student that thinks in concepts. But we can talk about that on another podcast. Well, let me know what you think. I have a Facebook, Angela's Homeschool. I have a Twitter's, Angela's Homeschool. So please let me know what you think. I look forward to hearing back from each and every one of you, if that's possible. And I thank you, and class is dismissed. Goodbye.